Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and we are taping the show, so you can't call in, but it will be aired later today. Today, I'm joined by Julie Garay, who's the Senior Program Manager for Fresh New London, and Esther Pendola, who is the Food to the People Coordinator, and we'll talk more about what Food to the People is, also under the umbrella of Fresh New London. So welcome. I've been actually wanting to have a conversation on air and off air too, for that matter, about food insecurity in the New London area, because it seems like it's more a crisis now than ever. And the city government, the greater New London community doesn't really have a very good handle on how to address it. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy that you two are here today. Just to kind of start, maybe you can both talk a little bit about, or each talk a little bit about Fresh New London and its purpose, its mission, and what fronts it works on.
Yeah, of course. So I can get started.
Yeah.
So Fresh has been around, next year will be 20 years. So Fresh has been around right now 19 years. And we're a small food justice organization that focuses on the education of young people, empowerment of young people, and the ability for community members to really voice their concerns food-wise, community-wise, and anything else that really impacts their day-to-day. Just like you were saying, right? There's a lot of insecurities in New London as well as the country, honestly, when it comes to food. So our organization is a home where we hit a lot of things, right? I think Fresh has a lot of roots everywhere, and Esther can definitely speak to that as well. But we bring a lot of different walks of life to Fresh for folks to be able to share their concerns around food, health, insecurities of all different kinds. So yeah, that's kind of what Fresh does. Yeah.
Does each of you, or maybe starting with Esther, because I don't know the answer at all, is how did your connection with Fresh begin?
That's a really good question. So Food to the People started because we are a part of the HIC of Southeastern Connecticut. So the HIC is the Health Improvement Collaborative of Southeastern Connecticut, which is a multi-organization coalition whose focus is around health, equity, social justice, and access to care. And the catalyst of it is really COVID. When COVID began, we were sitting at the leadership table, which Fresh is a part of the leadership team of the HIC. We asked the community, what do you need right now? And we asked that question right out of the gate. And the two things that immediately bubbled to the top for families, specifically in New London, we were asking New London families, but I think it really represented the whole New London County, was internet access, so that kids could homeschool. And then after that came food really quickly, because what happened was when COVID started, a lot of the food programs or food assistance programs shut down because we didn't know what we were dealing with at that point, how you transferred COVID, and historically food assistance programs, especially food pantries, have been run by people who were retired, older adults, and we knew that they were most vulnerable. So a lot of them backed away because they were scared, and they should have been at that point because
Right.
we didn't know, and we didn't have a vaccine. So we just kind of all came together as a community, the City of New London, Ledgely Health District, Fresh, and many other organizations came together. The hospital, I was at the hospital at that point, and we all just sort of came together and started this food pantry, and it started with 50 families, and then just started growing and growing and growing until we have what we have today.
That's really interesting. I had not thought about it in terms of COVID, but when people are accessing emergency food, it's almost always in a context of crowds of people being in the same place in the same time. And in that early, like first year of COVID, actually, one of the things, the few things that people had control over was whether they were in contact with the outside world.
Absolutely. So we morphed many times during COVID because we had to change our strategy. At first, we were doing mostly delivery with some pickups. And then because our list grew so much, we couldn't keep up with that. It just wasn't a sustainable plan, but we were we thought we were just bridging a gap. And it turned out we are the gap. But, but at the time, we were just trying to bridge a gap. And then it became families would just come in. And then the COVID rate was at like 30% or 35%. And we were like, we can't have that many people inside at one time. It's not safe. So then we became a drive-through with very regimented programming in the inside to keep our volunteers safe. So, and that's where we're still landing, but we're landing there as a drive-through pantry only because we lack the space in order to do anything different. So that's sort of where we're at now.
And later on, I do want to talk about like what the anything different can look like
sure.
these days, because there are better models than having long lines of cars
100%.
on Mercer Street, which I encountered last week for the first time. Now, Julie, your history with Fresh goes back a little farther.
Yeah, so I've been with Fresh for 12 years. So when I was 14 years old, in the spring it'll be 13 years. But when I was 14 years old, I started off in the crew program. So Fresh has different like seasonal leaderships for young people. So you can come on as a crew member, and it's really just like getting to know the land, getting to know New London in this like different way. And even right now, like the young people that come on into the crew are able to volunteer at the pantry. They're able to, use their bilingual or trilingual skills if they'd like, in these really cool ways. But yeah, so I started in 2010, 11, around there, and I continued on in like different leadership ladders. So a lot of them were like, this position sounds right, let's create it, cool. That's like the biggest thing for us. So yeah, I was assistant farmer, then I was a crew leader, then I ran the youth program for 3-4 years, and then now I'm supervising all the programs that come out of Fresh to an extent.
And Fresh has expanded a lot over the years. We did have a Thinking Green show probably in about 2005 or so with Arthur and Laura Burfoot and Arthur Lerner, when they were just raising vegetables in a couple of backyards in New London.
Yeah. So we started off, like you said, growing in people's backyards that were like, we have good space if you want to come, grow some food. Then we had access to, with partnership with Waterford Country School, we grew there, I want to say like 3 or 4 years. And then we realized like we did like this big kind of assessment of what New Londoners really need. And we realized like, okay, it's really great to have about an acre out in Waterford, but folks need to also know and feel supported in growing in their backyards and knowing that it's possible to feed your family with, a really small backyard or a really small front yard or community gardens. And I think that has brought us in a good way in alignment with what our mission truly is, which is like anyone can do this and anyone can be a part of this. And I think, Esther, speaking on the pantry, COVID has really just taken like kind of like a really small sheet off of what we already knew was going on in our food system, right? People have always struggled to get food. The way our food system is built, people have always struggled, and still they will continue to struggle, right? But I think COVID has really made it more obvious what has been there for a long time now. So, yeah.
And in terms of fresh filling the gap in some ways, because it's a really big gap, the cost of healthful food has always been much higher than the cost of junk food.
Yeah.
And so it's largely access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And you know, there are a lot of people raising chickens for eggs in New London too. I mean, just people being able to be more self-sufficient with the kinds of things that really are hard to afford in a conventional capitalistic marketplace.
Well, I think that also brings into play like our cultural staples that are so important for a lot of our families. The cool thing about having the pantry is like we have really easy access to a lot of people that we can survey, right? And a lot of folks are Haitian Creole, a lot of folks are Puerto Rican, Dominican, Peruvian. So we ask them, like, what are things that you really wish you could have on your plate that don't grow in this country that we can kind of figure out? And that has made it really cool for us and for the pantry to get the access to plantains and pineapples. And then we are also at Fresh experimenting on what are cultural crops that we can grow in this climate in really fun and easy or hard ways to have access to here.
Now, Esther, I know that you talked about when you started in the early COVID days, but I was wondering, you probably can't take specific statistics on the families that utilize the pantry, but what is the status? Are things getting better? Are they getting worse? Are there more people suffering from food insecurity now than 5 years ago? What's the current state?
It's worse. I wasn't in the game 5 years ago, but from listening to my counterparts around New London, we just can't keep up with demand. We run out every week with a line now, which is really heartbreaking. There's just not enough, and it's multifactorial, right? Like the rents right now are astronomical for families. The benefits have been cut. The child tax credits have been cut. The SNAP benefits have been cut. All of these benefits that people were receiving during COVID have disappeared. And then to make matters worse, you have, now, free lunch is gone, right? Except for kids that qualify, and that's if their parents can do that paperwork, right? So, I think New London's all free, but like there are other towns who are utilizing our pantry where they can't fill out that paperwork. So their kids aren't getting free lunch. And then on top of that, you have skyrocketing food costs. And so you put all those things together and we're seeing a huge, huge need. And they did a study, Connecticut Food Share did a study of New London County, and they found that there's an 18 million meal differential between what pantries are providing and what people need. So there's 18 million meals in New London County.
Wow. And my understanding is it isn't exactly that there's a shortage of food. It's like we just can't match up the distribution with the people who need it.
Sure.
Which is everyone, really.
Yeah. I mean, everyone needs food in order to live, correct? So, and when they did research in 2019, they found that in New London proper, there was almost a 30% food insecurity rate. So a third of people in New London are food insecure just to begin with. Never mind these additional pressures that we don't know that implication from COVID and from all of the other things we just talked about.
Well, yeah, I had been wondering if the, explosion in rent costs, how that was impacting
Sure.
families, because traditionally they've said people shouldn't have to pay more than 30% of their, income on the roof over their head. And now we have people who are families that are routinely paying half. Wages have been pretty stagnant. Minimum wage hasn't gone up for a while, and it's even at the higher Connecticut rate compared to the national, it's not a living wage. I think even I think about 20 years ago, I worked in early childhood education, which was a very low paying job, and luckily I wasn't really the main, income earner in the family, but, a lot of, the people I worked with were single people who qualified for all the programs, and I believe there were some surveys on what the cost of living was in southeastern Connecticut now, and you needed to earn, I don't know, $25 an hour to just,
Break even.
get the main needs met. And a lot of people are still earning less than that, and even if there are two adults in the family and they're both earning minimum wage, they're not doing that. So, so I'm not going to, as I mentioned before, I don't think we can be very linear here, so I'm going to be a little scattered. So can you talk a little bit about some of the new ways to get emergency food to people? And then after we do that, maybe we'll talk about what we need to do long-term systemically. But I know that in some places like Providence, there are more shopper's choice kinds of models for getting food to people. Have you seen that in action, how it works?
I was, when I worked at the hospital, one of the things I did was started a food pantry in Rhode Island with Westerly Hospital. And we actually set that up as a shopper's choice facility. And it's amazing. Because they operate more regularly, they're able to take, local farmers are able to bring their things at the end of the day and just say, here, and we'll write this off. It's just more in and out, right? Because families are able to come more than once a week. So there's not also that huge line of cars that we would love to avoid. And it's a great way to run programming. It gives people the ability to not waste because they're not taking things that they don't eat or that are not culturally appropriate that I'm putting in their box. And I know that. Because I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
I wish I could ask all 400 families each week what they want, but I can't right now. That would be wonderful. We just don't have that capacity. So it's just a more efficient and definitely a better, it's a more dignified way for sure to get food.
And in addition, you mentioned waste. Also, I imagine if you have perishables coming in and they can go out within 24 hours, it's a lot different than if there's a once a week distribution time that, half of the greens might be totally beyond the pale by then.
Yeah, I mean, for us, for our pantry, we actually get in everything and give it out everything on the same day. So that way we can avoid waste and
within 2 or 3 hours, right?
Yeah, we actually.
Yeah.
So we have about 30 volunteers each week that take in about 15,000 pounds of food, sort it, and put it in boxes and get it out to the road in about an hour and a half. And then we give it out in about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how many volunteers I have getting the food out to the cars.
And you do that at the senior center
Yes.
on Wednesdays, right?
Yeah. Not that we're looking for business.
No, I know. Oh, do you need more volunteers,
We
though?
could use some more volunteers, especially people that are interested in being community facing, because we have a lot of volunteers that come who also get food and who do the sorting and boxing process that takes place very early, between 9 and 10. But then when we're trying to give the food out, a lot of the families have their boxes and need to get home or need to move on for the rest of their day. So really from that 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., we need people who preferably are bilingual, either in Haitian Creole or Spanish, to be able to give out boxes to the community.
So if people want to volunteer, and we'll say, can they just contact you?
They sure can. They can just even come the morning of around 8:30 or whenever they can and just say, hey, where's Esther? And people will point you towards me.
And you'll find something for them to do, I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah, they call me the conductor of chaos. Yeah, I can definitely find something for people to do.
Now, back to some of the things that Fresh is doing, I guess, which are not really big systemic changes, but they're more than just emergency food for the day. Do you want to talk about the community gardens and the backyard beds and that kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of the big systemic change that we do is in partnership a lot with the Food to the People and the Food Justice Action Team that we were able to create all together. But so we have 3 community gardens, and then we have 7 snack bed sites that we plant ourselves, we water ourselves, and then community members can go and harvest whenever they want. And all of it is like, trust-based and a lot of questions and a lot of, trial and error kind of thing. But what isn't in New London, So in our website, if you go to freshnewlondon.org, on our website, we have maps of all of them. And the really cool thing is, and we can talk more about our event that we'll be having on the 23rd, but what we do for all of our young people the first couple weeks that they join is we do a community garden walk. And we go to every single site that we have. And it's really just an hour walk, an hour and a half walk to all of our sites.
It's not a big city.
Not a big city at all. And so it's all very centralized, which is perfect. So young people can experience all of the spaces, kind of get a grasp of it. So we do those, which is the snack beds. Then we also build garden beds for families. And that's like the fun and interesting thing about food justice, right? Is like some folks want to grow themselves. They want to learn how to do it themselves. And other people don't want to touch dirt. They hate worms and they hate bugs. And that's fine, right? Like,
Yeah, they still have to eat.
exactly, exactly. And Fresh, there's a home for everyone. So we have community garden beds that folks can get installed in the spring, and young people and community members build it themselves. I think this year we had 25 to 30 built and installed, thanks in partnership with like the the Sun, the Mohegan Sun basketball team.
Oh,
they helped
wow.
us. Yeah, they helped us install them all. They're a great partner in the food pantry and at Fresh. So we have that, and then we also do in all of our sites, we have different growing spaces, and our biggest space is Cottage Street Urban Farm, and that's where we really experiment with a lot of our cultural crops. So this year we grew, oh my God, we get like 40 pounds of black-eyed peas every week we've been getting for the past couple, I want to say month now, we've been getting about 40 pounds consistently. It's starting to dwindle down. We're getting to the end of it, but that's like one of the cultural crops we just grew for the first time this year. We grew lentils, gandules or pigeon peas, they call it as well. Those are a lot of cultural crops that a lot of folks asked for. So we're learning how to grow them, which is fun. On Saturdays, we do a pay what you can table. So traditionally, we try to do CSAs, but this year we're growing less food. So we tried out our pay what you can table, which we've been doing for a couple years now. But this year we've been getting a lot of great success because we've been marketing it at the pantry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so folks are coming in and so we set it up just like a very fancy farmer's market or CSA. And folks come in, they grab whatever they want. They can leave $1, they can leave a penny, they could leave nothing. And that's totally fine with us. And usually people just come to like have conversations, hang out, ask a lot of questions. And I think that's like a big change and very similar to the walk-in pantry that we are talking about too, where like there's dignity there, right? Folks don't have to feel embarrassed or ashamed of needing food for free or very low cost. And like, you know, that's part of our work here, is that we are feeding our community and we're feeding our souls. It's not just about our pockets. But the big systemic work that we do is we do a lot of partnerships with colleges, and we do trainings for volunteers, which we're hoping to do a lot more trainings. Because, right, like there's still norms and there's still judgment within all of the food system. And a lot of it is like, well, you know, these people are coming to get food from us. These people need it like really cheap or whatever. And like, honestly, we can all be at that stage at any point of our lives. So if we start our work through dignity and respect of one another, then we can go a lot further. And I think, you know, I really want to give Esther a lot of credit for that, because all of the majority, if not all of the volunteers that go to the food to the people pantry every week are patrons that were like, oh, you need help? Like, oh, I can come in and help you guys? Okay, I guess I will start doing this. There's this like really cute group of abuelos, or like grandpas, that come in at 7 in the morning, and they're like,
early.
They're ready to like help Esther, and like a couple of them speak no English. Esther speaks no Spanish, and they love each other. So that's the cool thing about this work, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you are intentional and loving in the work, then community is built, no matter if you speak the same language or not. So that's a lot of the systemic work that we do, which is, it really feeds my soul, and I know it feeds all of our souls.
Well, it is interesting to me. Human needs have become very commodified over the last, 20 years. It seems worse than ever before. Yeah. You see the for-profit motive in healthcare, and in housing, and of course in food. But it's odd to me that what you're talking about, this pay, whatever you can or whatever you choose to, for getting produce at your table. I look at real estate transactions in the newspaper, and sometimes buildings go for a lot of money, and sometimes they go for cheap, and sometimes they're transferred for zero. Yeah. They're all considered like the same level of transactions in the same list. And it's not cost dependent. And I don't know how it happened that when it comes to something like food, well, if people are getting it for cheap, that's kind of a stigma.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah, we work really hard to not have it be that. That's one of the things we do. Like, we're really happy you came this week. We're so glad. How's your dog? And my Spanish is not awesome, but I'm getting better at it. So I try every week, and they appreciate that, I think, or they laugh at me. Whatever one is fine.
They enjoy it.
They enjoy it. It's enjoyable. But it is a community that we worked really hard, and we remind our volunteers continuously, like, this is where our head's at, and this is where we want people. This is how we want people to feel when they come here. And that's one of the reasons I believe that we became such a popular location, is because, one, we have translators, and two, hopefully we exude at least a sense of warmth, and also it feels normal to come to see us. So that's what I want them to feel. I really don't want them to feel anything when they come. I want it to be like a neutral event coming to get food.
Now, I hope this isn't a touchy question, but I am curious. Are you secure in the use of your location at the senior center?
Well,
I just wonder, because there have been a few changes of ownership, and I don't know what what kind of agreement there is with the city and Fresh and the owner.
Right. So because we are a program of the HIC, we're housed under Fresh, but we are a program of the HIC. The city is a part of that program. So the city is in partnership with the Food to the People. However, we understand that we are borrowing the space. We just keep plugging away with the hopes that we'll find a home eventually for us to be. But we we don't have a lease. Let's just put it that way. So, it's every week we try and be a good neighbor and we try and be a good guest.
And someday the kind of support you might want from the public is to talk about how important this is.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think, like Esther said, right, we want to be able to have a grocery style pantry at some point. And the senior center, never saying that they suggest this, and we know the senior center isn't the right place for that, right? So we have been keeping an eye out. I think city folks have also tried to support us in that too. So we're looking out for a place that can be grocery style pantry where, again, folks feel comfortable that it's not a 1.5 hour span of 400 families, but maybe it's, 5 or 6 hours every other day where folks can come in and grocery shop and then leave with money still in their pocket.
And nights and weekends for working families.
Sure.
That's the dream, right? Is to have it open for families to come on the nights and the weekends. At this exact moment, there are no pantries operating on nights or weekends. Mm-hmm. There used to be. There is no longer at this moment. My understanding is it will return in a few months on Saturdays, but at this moment, there is nothing for families that come on off hours.
And I also, saying in a couple months, right, that's also a little scary because November, December are the tightest times and the emotionally most exhausting times for families through depression, through the lack of food and access. Then, you want to have a Thanksgiving meal with your family and not having access to that. Thankfully, we're starting surveying this week for Thanksgiving meals, but yeah, it's like that's a part of the scarcity, thing there too. Yeah.
And I was hoping that we'd learn something from COVID more than we have about, the value of like some of our healthcare system not being commodified. For a long time, for a couple of years, people could get free vaccines, free to them, free COVID testing. And I thought, people will learn that, like, if you have a real, like, universal healthcare system, then you can, like, design your public health around that, plan your public health around that, and people will participate because they don't have to worry about, do I, get this COVID test or do I eat lunch? And we haven't really learned those messages, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. That hits a really good point about solidarity work and true meaning of community. If we are helping our neighbors, then as a whole, our community is healthier and happier. So, and that's the goal of Fresh, that's the goal of the pantry and all the partnership that we do with Ledgelight Health District and the city, is if we're helping thy neighbor, as one would say, then our community as a whole would be much better.
Now, who are the other partners in the HIC?
There's lots of different partners because it encompasses all of Ledgelight Health District. So it's not just New London, but Lawrence Memorial Hospital is a part of that. Fresh and
the Meal Center.
The Meal Center is a big part of that. Gemma. UCFS, TVCC, all of the major organizations. I think it's like 40 different organizations that I would never be able to like regurgitate right now. But yeah, I mean, it encompasses a lot of the HIC, they really are they're also driving the food justice program that Fresh is also heading. So they're a piece of that as well.
Yep.
So do you feel like the needle is like moving a little bit towards like broader awareness of the struggles?
Yeah, I think, I would say, right, there's a difference between theory and practice. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we're continually facing is, it's amazing, and I'm really thankful for the fact that the city identified racism as a public health. Now what are we going to do about that? And I think we're still in the stages of figuring out what we're going to do about that. So again, the theory, great, let's identify the issues. Practice, how are we going to get to resolution?
And I think some of the practice does really involve people changing not just their mindset, but where funding is prioritized.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how decisions are made and policies are made in government and elsewhere.
Yeah. My next thing, later on, I'm going to do an interview with a candidate, and it will be maybe more political than this, but politics does, affect
100%.
The details of our lives.
And in some ways, it's good. So, for
Yeah.
instance, TFAP, which is the federal program that we get some of our food from, they really changed a lot of their criteria on who is eligible for TFAP. And because of that, it sort of is shifting a lot of the pantries in a really good direction, in my opinion. They're asking for information, but they're not requiring documentation. And that's a huge step. Like, we would never require anyone to prove that they live in Connecticut or prove that they have a particular income or prove anything to us. You tell me your name is Gary Smith and you live on 123 Smith Street, that's what I'm taking. It doesn't matter to me. You just tell me how many people are in your family, and that's great. So so that piece is really, really good.
Yeah, that's refreshing to hear. I worked for Head Start for many years, and the application form, it probably still is, but was at that time incredibly intrusive. And
Well, that's the whole point of, dignity, access with dignity, because you having to bear your entire traumas and struggles just to say I need a little extra money for the month or a little extra food is inhumane, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that is an example of good policy made by a government, made by the federal government, that is influence behavior for the pantries, because if you are accepting TFAP money, or TFAP food rather, you are not allowed to do those things that you have historically done. And it influences and changes the way that you conduct business, so to speak. And I think it's really positive.
Now, I know you don't have really specific information, but are the people and families you're serving mostly members of working poor? Are they elderly? Are they all are there any generalizations about what groups they're coming from?
I would say a majority are working poor. I would say probably 30% are abuelas who are coming and picking up food for everybody in their family.
Yeah.
Because they say, I'm here to pick up for my sister and my cousin, and and so we give them the food for that many families. I would say we have 40% children. We have a lot of kids, and we have kids coming through who are asking me for food because they are hungry in that moment.
Wow.
So it's not unusual for me to be handing out, bags of Doritos or bananas or whatever I have on hand to all the kids in the car before they drive off, or whoever is working with the family. I would say we're probably 90% families are Hispanic, probably like 5% Haitian Creole or Black, African American, and then 5% white or other.
Yeah.
But that is who we have historically served, and that's where families feel safe.
Yeah. And a lot of folks are coming from, again, the good thing about HIC is that we're serving the greater New London area, right? And a lot of folks are coming from outside of the majority are New Londoners, and a lot of folks are also coming outside of New London because there's just not as, there's a lot of pantries that ask for a lot of documentation. If you don't bring your children's birth certificates, I'm not giving you food for a child. That's how pantries are, right? And I remember there was one day I was working at the pantry, and this family, it was around the end of the day, and this family came and was like, we have our birth certificates, please just give us food. I was like, we don't require that, but let me give you some bags of potatoes or something, right? So that's the culture around our area, and so a lot of folks are comfortable coming to us because we don't require any of those things.
Because you're not supposed to be asking. That's why we don't do it. And also, when we started, one of the things we did is I worked with a graduate student who was working on her master's in public health, and I said, we have the opportunity to do whatever we want here, basically, and I want to know best practices. What are the things that we should be doing? What are the things we shouldn't be doing? And we looked at the research, we saw what barriers people were facing, and we just eliminated them. It was that simple. Well, it wasn't simple, but it was.
It sounds simple.
It sounds simple. In retrospect, it wasn't terrible, but it was just. But you have to, every time you make a change, you have to shift the culture of the people who are working within the pantry. So our pantry culture has shifted from when we started, it was mostly Medical Reserve Corps volunteers, and now we've shifted to mostly pantry recipients who are there as volunteers.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And I think that, right, like, we're not requiring a lot of things because they're just not required in general, is also because, like, we've worked on the elimination of this this promise to policing of poor people and policing of Black and brown bodies, right?
100%.
I think that there's so much allegiance to the rules and like what is going on in others. Oh, everyone's doing this, so we have to do it too. And it's like, no, well, let's sit down and actually like critically think what is required and what is actually just harmful and maybe slightly triggering families, right?
Well, in New London, so we're entering a municipal election season. So what would you all say for like the incoming mayor and council? What can the New London city government do to help Fresh and all the other organizations that are working on food insecurity here?
That's a great question. You go.
Well, I think one of the first things that they need is a food ambassador for the city of New London. There should be somebody for mental health. There should be somebody for housing. There should be somebody for food insecurity. There should be a person whose whole job is looking at the bigger picture of this and working on policy to help it. That's the first thing I would do. And I also would say, we need more communication. We started, Gemma and I started a table of people that are running food pantries just in New London, so we could all communicate with each other. But we need it to be even deeper than that. We need to sort of have a thread that sort of binds all of us together somehow, so that we can share resources. Perhaps we're working on it, but it's still a baby. And it would be great if we had other New London leadership, especially within the city, in that process.
So I was going to go back to some of the fresh stuff that's coming up. I looked at the website, and you're starting to take signups now for the Fall Youth Program.
Yes.
So what is that about? Who can apply, and what can they expect if they participate?
Yeah, great question. So our young people, so we do seasonal programs, like I mentioned, and this time we're going, now that it is September, we are going into our fall season. And so this is the kind of the program that a lot of young people get to do a lot of hands-on work, as well as relationship building and assessments around what are the best communication practices for our spaces, right? So we have this amazing leader named Sophie. They are working on signage, and some signage that's even like like imagery and no words, because again, we have so many different languages in our city. Signage to teach people how to harvest, what are the crops that are in the beds, things like that. So we're gonna work on that. We're also gonna be doing some preservation workshops. We're gonna be doing a lot of just, garlic party, planting garlic out and things like that. So for the fall program, that's what's happening. The age range is usually like college age to about 14, so 14 to college age. But then also, and this is like for the wider audience too, in the fall we do, the winter we do workshops, like systemic education workshops. So how is free labor and slavery, how did how did slavery really build a robust food system in this country, and how did we get here, and how is it still happening, right? So last year we did our first trial run led by Chloe Nunez, amazing youth coordinator for education. And this year we're actually going to do a couple workshops for adults. So I'm really excited about that. So keep an eye out on our website and our social media. We're going to promote that for adults to come and volunteer or come and spend a couple hours with us to learn too.
That sounds great. I did notice that the fall program is looking for people, youth who have some relationship already with Fresh.
Yeah, so we'd love to have young people that already have experience with Fresh. We're also okay with bringing on a couple new young people that are really interested and like down to learn it all. But yeah, if it's like veteran or alum young people, that'd be great to have too.
And you have another event coming up, and we really didn't talk much about all the locations you have around town and the different things.
You just have to invite me back.
So, well, we could do that. It might be after November 7th, but there's a walk coming up that's a fundraiser but an educational thing too. So do you want to talk about that?
Yes, so I'll put the flyer up if you want to see it. Let me cover my eyes so it's not so creepy. Ta-da! So we have our garden walk on September 23rd. So you can register before the event, and I'm going to put it down. So you can register before the event on our website, but you can also register live right there. So it's a suggested donation to join the walk of $10. But again, if you just want to enjoy the walk and come for the event stuff.
You're not going to turn anyone away.
No, we're definitely not going to turn anyone away. So it's going to be a walk to all of our sites, and then at the end, we're going to give free crops away. We're going to have a pizza party, some music, and we're going to have some vendors there as well too. Like the Connecticut Sun is probably going to give out tickets. And we'll have some master gardeners sitting, giving some educational information as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Our first one was last year. And Esther brought her little babies, which was fun. And it's kid-friendly as well, so definitely bring your kids. And there's a lot of little scavenger hunts for young people too in all of the spaces. So it's very family-friendly, and we're gonna have food and a lot of great atmosphere and stuff, so yeah.
So I don't know if we really talked a little about the locations where you are active. You mentioned some of them, but I don't know if New Londoners have passed it and not really known what's going on.
Yeah.
So you've been at Mercer and Williams for a long time.
Yes, so we've been on Mercer and Williams for about, I want to say 9 to 10 years now. And then we have our newest, biggest space, which is Cottage Street Urban Farm, which is the upstairs space, which is blocked off for only staff members just because of safety reasons. But then we have our snack beds, and it's across the street from the Supreme Court parking lot on Cottage Street. Then we have partnerships with other spaces. So for example, the city reached out to us to create a garden at the McDonald Park, which is on the corner of McDonald and Connecticut Ave, which is like parallel to Garfield. And that is our second biggest community garden space. Then our third biggest community garden space is in partnership with the Southeastern Connecticut Land Trust, which is Ledyard Street Garden. It's beautiful, very nice, and it's a space that was too small for a house. So when the owner passed away, his family actually, his last request was to donate it to us. So his family donated it to us, and we created a beautiful community garden that folks are welcome to go. Then we have a partnership with Ledgelight as well. They reached out to us and asked to install, I think it's 8 snack beds on their site. So
That's on Broad Street at the Ledgelight building?
Exactly, right across the street from Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, is that the old Bartlett School or something? Yeah. For old New Londoners.
Yeah. So there's that, and then we also have 2 more sites on Stanton in front of the New London Youth Affairs office, and then we have 2 beds at the Community Meal Center. So those are all of our sites, and the event is going to walk us through all those spaces, and all of those sites are in partnership with every single organization that is in that space, and community members as well.
Well, I see we only have 5 minutes left, but this is an off-the-wall question in a way. But so old cities tend to have really problematic soil, lead and cadmium and other heavy metal contamination. Is that the main reason for the raised beds?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Yes. So it's two main reasons, right? So there's the toxic soil. We have very toxic soil. Alicia and I like to joke that New London is basically all just one landfill because the soil is really bad in New London, right? And a lot of families don't know that, right? So they get really excited to grow in their backyards, and then their tomatoes look awful and they shouldn't eat their food. So that's a big part of our education too. But we do raised beds because we're able to put like the perfect compost topsoil mix for folks, and it's very like wheelchair accessible, as well as just you know, for folks who can't bend down and things. That's the other reason why we do it. But yeah, our soil is very toxic. And at Cottage Street, so we have 3 layers. If anyone goes and visits, you can see that we have 3 different layers. The top layer that we grow in the ground is actually the least toxic soil that we have. So we grow in the ground there because it's pretty healthy soil, and we amend it every single year as well. So yeah.
And one other quick thing, I noticed on the website you have a couple of work days coming up.
We do, yeah. So definitely go to the pantry. I suggest 8:30 to, usually you guys end around 11:30, right?
Yeah, it's been ending quicker and quicker.
Yeah, so 8:30 to 11:30, Wednesdays at the New London Senior Center. That's a big one that they always would love some support there. And then we have community work days on Saturdays. Usually 9 to 12, we always put our locations on the website as well as social media. And for the most part, it's at our Mercer Garden on the corner of Mercer and Williams. But this Saturday, we're doing a big work day at our urban farm, which is on Cottage Street. So folks can sign up. There's going to be a Sign Up Genius. There is a Sign Up Genius online. Folks can come. But every Saturday, besides the 23rd, we'll have work days.
And the last question, I guess, is for anything else, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can always reach out on Facebook. We're very active on Facebook. We're very active on Instagram. Our website, you can also reach out. There's always, you can always email us at info@freshnewlondon.org. And then we have an office number as well. Our office phone is weird, so maybe don't call us. But you can also stop by if there's any questions or want to drop anything off. You can always stop by at our office.
And that's right next to the urban farm.
Exactly. So 26 Broad Street. 26 Broad Street. Yes, New London. Yeah. I was like, wait, what? Yeah.
And since you're a nonprofit, we're allowed to say you can, if you go to the website, there are places to donate.
Yep. We love some donations. So yeah.
Well, thank you, both of you, and we'll have to have you back like at the end of the year, after the elections and after
all the craziness,
and see what's in store for 2024. So thanks for coming on, and for all of you out there, we're going to be also showing a show this week on with Shanice Austin on like financial literacy and the kind of stuff she does.
Awesome.
So have a great day, and thank you to both of you, Julie and Esther.
Thank you.